We're back with another team selection video, this time out of Gameweek 35. We've got two doubles shortly afterwards in 36 and 37, and I'll be talking about how I'm doing so far in Double Gameweek 34. We've still got one game left, Brighton versus Man United, and I've got 6 players involved, so I'll be hoping for even more gains from the position I'm currently in. If you end up enjoying this video, be sure to share this video around with those that love FPL, smash the like button and subscribe for new. Comment down below your thoughts in terms of the best players to buy for the remainder of the season, and also talking about how you're doing so far in Double Gameweek 34. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. This week was very mixed bag for goalkeepers across the board, not just the ones I had, but also those that maybe were very popular in terms of Double Gameweek 34 players. So I had David Raya and Kepa Arrizabalaga. I went with Raya and he got 1 less point than Kepa due to the amount of saves that Kepa made against Arsenal, but ultimately not many regrets there on that front. And I was considering a move potentially to someone like Ederson, but I'm just not a big fan of Ederson in general. I thought he'd start both games, get 1 clean sheet, and whilst Man City did keep a clean sheet against West Ham, it was Ortega stepping in goal. So those that maybe took a hit to get in Ederson, I do understand and feel your frustration. I'm never a big fan of taking hits for goalkeepers in general, but it would obviously be quite a lie if I said, yeah, I mean, that's what you get for doing it, because I thought Ederson would start both games and Pep Guardiola can do rotation in any single position whatsoever. But the main reason why I was always advocating against Ederson as part of a normal transfer even, and especially as part of a hit, is the fact that his ceiling is generally low and he gets a lot of 1 and 2 pointers, and his ceiling is pretty much 6. On the very odd occasion he might get 7, and I actually would rather have Raya and Kepa despite them having worse fixtures until the end of the season. So I went with Raya, it didn't really work out, but then again, if I went for Ederson, it would have been even worse. Despite what happened, I'm very happy with this transfer. Trent Alexander-Arnold came in, he delivered 11 points for me, 7 in the second game with a clean sheet and a bonus point, and 4 in the first game with that assist against Spurs. And this new inverted role is giving him a new lease of life. Liverpool are looking much better, and despite the defensive frailties, they're still looking much more imposing, especially in home matches against the opposition, and Trent is a great option from now until Gameweek 38. The main issue is that I sold Ake for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Ake came back in the second game of Double Gameweek 34, scored and delivered a 15-pointer. So when you also take into account that I took a hit for that, I've actually down by 8 points on that decision, but I still have no regrets. I think getting Trent in was the right decision, and if I decided to keep Ake, start him, it would have been Trippier or Botman to be sold, and whilst that would have been better for this week, it might not be for the weeks to come. Of course, I'd still rather have Ake than the likes of Botman and Trippier at this moment in time, but there you go, these things can happen, and I thought Ake could come back in for the second game, but I just pretty much expected 6 or 7 points at the maximum, so I was quite happy to buy Trent Alexander-Arnold in the end. Then we go to the rest of the defence. 7-pointer by Luke Shaw so far. He's got Brighton away in the second game, and despite how good Man United have been this season, especially at home, I'm not really expecting a clean sheet away from home here against Brighton, and honestly, even a 2-pointer will do just fine. 9 overall from Shaw would be pretty decent, and I think that's quite realistic if you look at the nature of Brighton and the way they can cause problems to Man United defensively. I know in a recent meeting in the FA Cup semi-final it ended 0-0. That would be great for those with Estupinian, Luke Shaw, Jason Still and David De Gea, but I've also got some attackers in the mix, so honestly a bit of a mixture. I think in terms of assists, maybe bonus points and goals would be ideal for me. But let's wait and see how that game pans out. It will be a fascinating contest. I'm actually giving Brighton the edge in that match, but let's wait and see. I could be completely wrong about that, and United certainly have been doing very well. I also went with Trippier here, and one decision I actually decided not to make was to take a hit to go from Trippier to John Stones, who was my favourite Man City defender, and he probably still remains that, to be fair, and I didn't do it, and honestly, I only would have gained 2 points from that, so not really too many hard feelings. The thing is, though, I did bench Botman, and he was the one who ended up getting an assist awarded later on, so he got 5 points, and Trippier got 2, and it's just very surprising to see what's happened to these Newcastle defenders. Of course, they can start to turn things around, starting from Gameweek 35, and they've got that nice double in 36, and also some decent fixtures to round off the season. But Trippier, I have to say, has been very disappointing to say the least in the last 10 game weeks, and the final defender was Estupinian, who produced a 9-pointer against Wolves with the assist and the clean sheet, and he was very close to getting in and amongst the bonus points. And once again, let's see how he does against Manchester United. That should be a very good game, and it will also determine for a lot of us if we end up getting a red arrow or a green one. I've got 6 players left in that game, of course, with 2 defenders and also 4 attackers. Now, one transfer that definitely paid off this week was Mohamed Salah, who produced an 18-pointer. The one that made way was Bukayo Saka, who only produced a 2-pointer in the end against Chelsea. I thought Saka could do well and maybe get a goal or an assist. He did neither. And Salah produced a goal in both games, and he also got maximum bonus points against Fulham. And actually, in the reaction stream yesterday, before the lineups came out, I was predicting Salah's haul against Fulham. I thought he'd get a goal, and that's about it. But he ended up getting the bonus points as well, which was a big bonus, of course. And Salah is a really good option to round off the season. The big issue, though, is that some of you might not be able to have a Bruno Fernandes for Double Gameweek 37, or you might want Harry Kane up front. And if it's a question of Salah versus Kane, that's a very tough one to call, but you might give Liverpool the edge simply because they have better fixtures, and Salah's been in very good form recently. He's actually scored in his last 8 games at Anfield. He's been getting a few penalties recently, and he's also got so much to offer, and Liverpool are looking much more organised and much more threatening, I think, in the last month or two. So Salah remains a very good option here, and those that captain him, fair play. Bruno Fernandes also got an 11 points in the first game, and he also has a very good record against Brighton, and I know Aston Villa is his favourite opponent, but Brighton are right up there in terms of goals and assists against a certain opposition. So I'm actually quite confident Bruno Fernandes could sneak another attack and return, maybe an assist, and that would produce a very good total. Even just one assist would make him outscore the likes of Erling Haaland potentially. So that'll be one to keep an eye on, and some people that may be watching this video might have captained him, and if that's the case, fair play, that's a good decision. Less if he ends up outscoring Haaland in the end, who was captained by pretty much most of us this week. Then we look at the other midfielders. Rashford produced an assist in the first game for Bruno Fernandes, and that gave Man United's only goal of the game as they beat Aston Villa 1-0. And against Brighton, a bit similar to Bruno Fernandes, he has done it before at the Amex Stadium, obviously against different players, so to speak, but still, I think Rashford could do a pretty good job here, and despite the 0-0 at Wembley, I think there'll be goals this time round. And when we look at the rest of the midfielders, I went for a midfield 5. Solly March was very disappointing, probably my most disappointing player of the week so far. He started the game against Wolves. Brighton scored 5 goals in 50 minutes, and March was involved in any single one of them, and to cap things off, he was subbed off 4 minutes before 60, so he didn't get at least a clean sheet point or the additional appearance point. So only a 1-pointer by Solly March, and the same can be said for the likes of McAllister, and in my case Matoma, who came off the bench, and the same goes for Caicedo. Brighton rested quite a few key players, but that didn't stop them from notching their biggest ever victory in the Premier League, a 6-0 win against Wolves. So still very impressive stuff, but you would have thought with that scoreline, the likes of March, Matoma, McAllister would have done extremely well. That wasn't the case, and that can be FPL for you sometimes. Still a good showing from my midfield overall, and let's see if the second game has even more attack and returns in store for those remaining 4 midfielders. I only went with one forward this week in Erling Haaland, and once again, he scored against Fulham, that penalty. He was a bit anonymous throughout the whole game, but he still got that return, and the same goes for the West Ham match, where we're approaching 60-70 minutes, and Haaland still hadn't scored. He gets that goal, breaks the Premier League record. He's now got 35 goals for the Premier League season. I remember back in the summer, we were having this big debate about Haaland versus Harry Kane, and whilst I advocated for the most part that Haaland is probably going to be the better option to start the season, I actually ended up starting with Harry Kane, being a bit too clever because of his fixture against Southampton at home and Haaland away to West Ham. I quickly realised my mistake and rectified it, and whenever I haven't had Haaland, he has scored a brace in both of those matches and has cost me a lot of rank. So Erling Haaland is absolutely essential, and it's not a term I like to use often. I think I said it for Salah in the first half of last season, and this time round Haaland is clearly an essential player, and he probably will be in the years to come as well. Man City creates so many chances, he's always in and amongst the goals, and he produced a 16-pointer in the end. And he got 2 bonus points to cap things off against West Ham. So once again, a very good performance FPL-wise by Erling Haaland, and he is the only Man City player that we know is going to be nailed on, which plays a big part in how good of an FPL option he is in general. So that was my team so far in Double Gameweek 34. Let's see how it concludes after the Thursday match. Now let me talk about my current rank and also my points, all of that stuff, before moving on to the team selection portion of this video where I talk about my potential transfers. It's very boring, I know, but I captained Erling Haaland, and once again, he was amongst my top 2 or 3 high-scoring players. Of course, there could be a caveat to this. Maybe a Bruno Fernandes or a Rashford could maybe surpass him, and I might have a few regrets in terms of not going a bit different with the captaincy. But Mohamed Salah was the only one so far that managed to outscore Erling Haaland, and remember, midfielders have the additional, let's say, bonus or advantage of getting that additional clean sheet point and also an extra goal for scoring as a midfielder. So in the end, Haaland and Salah practically did the same thing, but Salah got those extra points with that midfielder advantage, and those that went for him, fair play. A 2-point advantage over those that went for Haaland, and his effective ownership was around 200%. So it's still a marginal gain, and that could be very important by the end of the season. I'm currently on 100 points, but with my -8 hit taken into account, I got 92 overall. And in terms of my overall rank, I've actually gone down slightly from 77k to 79k. Now, I am expecting a marginal green arrow by the end of the Brighton versus Man United match, but you just never know in football. I might even still maintain this red arrow, so it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But I am expecting in the end a marginal green arrow to at least make things a little bit better in my situation. But let's now talk about Game Week 35 and my transfer plans for Double Gameweeks 36 and 37. One of the toughest decisions I have this week is choosing which goalkeeper to go for, and I've got David Raya away to Liverpool and Kepa Arrizabalaga away to Bournemouth. Now, usually you look at this and think, Bournemouth away, that's a good fixture. Chelsea have a good chance of a clean sheet. We know that's not the case this year, but the reason why I'm currently favouring Kepa Arrizabalaga is because if there were to be a clean sheet between either side, I think Chelsea is still more likely, but I'm looking at it right now. Bournemouth have won 4 of the last 5 matches. You've got Chelsea who have lost 6 games in a row under Frank Lampard and across all competitions, and it's just not looking good for them. And with Liverpool versus Brentford, I think Liverpool will score maybe 2 or 3, and maybe it might come down to saves and bonus points, and then you might give Raya the edge as a result. But really, I'm going for Kepa at the moment just for the clean sheet probabilities, but I don't think they'll keep one in the end, to be fair. So this is something I might change by the time we get to the deadline stream, and I might just end up going for Raya and just conceding that both of them will probably not keep that clean sheet in the end, and it's just a matter of saves and bonus points, and that's where I would give David Raya the edge. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Bournemouth can no longer be seen as kind of an easy fixture unless they're facing someone like Man City, because they've given every single top team recently a really good game. They beat Liverpool, they were 2-0 up at one point against Arsenal and almost secured a draw. So they've been doing a really good job this season, and under their manager Gary O'Neill, I mean, he's done a fantastic job. He deserves a lot of credit. You can't say the same thing about Chelsea and Frank Lampard, but I'm currently going for Kepa Arrizabalaga, and let's see if that sticks. I'm still very happy with the transfer I made in Double Gameweek 34, despite the way it turned out, with Nathan Ake scoring 15 points and me taking a hit for that. Trent Alexander-Arnold now has 3 home games in a row, obviously had the 2 that just went by, and yet another one here. And Brentford generally are more solid in home matches compared to how they travel, but you'd still expect them to cause problems. I think Brentford will probably score a goal, but you would expect Liverpool to score maybe 2 or 3, and for Trent Alexander-Arnold to be involved, and maybe some bonus points will come along the way. Luke Shaw is away to West Ham, and that's a very tricky one to call. I think West Ham will be right up for it. They rested a few key players against Man City, and I think they're going to go all out, try to get a result here against Man United. Even a draw would be positive, and then build upon that momentum in the Europa Conference League semi-final. So that'll be interesting to see, but I think United still have a decent chance of a clean sheet. If it was at home, I'd probably bank on it, of United keeping a clean sheet. Away from home, it's a different story, but I think Man United's main issue on their travels is facing top half opposition, which West Ham currently aren't. So I am maybe quietly hoping for a Man United clean sheet in this instance. And then to wrap off the defence, I've gone for Pervis Estupiñán at home to Everton. And Brighton don't actually have the best record against Everton, but looking at the nature of both teams and the trajectory they're on, you would definitely give Brighton the edge, and I think they will win the game. But I think Everton will get a goal, maybe even 2. It wouldn't surprise me, but I think 1 goal for Everton is definitely viable. So I'm looking at my defence, and I just don't see too many clean sheets this time round. Oddly enough, it might be Luke Shaw who's got the best chance of any of these defenders, and also including the goalkeeper. And you look at my players on the bench as well, like Kieran Trippier and Botman facing Arsenal at home, and the defence doesn't really look too viable this week. I think those with Man City defenders, with Leeds at home, have the best chance of any team, and those with maybe John Stones, even Ederson, I think could probably enjoy a clean sheet in this case. While I'm not comfortable of not having Harry Kane in this instance, and it's been a while since I've done so, having Mohamed Salah is definitely not a bad substitute, and he is facing Brentford at home. Liverpool have been very solid at Anfield. He's got penalties, and Salah is just one of the best FPL assets of all time. This is a bit of an off-season for him, and yeah, he's right up there in terms of goal contributions. I think he's 3rd or 4th in the Premier League overall, so you just know the quality he has, and I think next season he could be flying from the get-go, and he could be challenging the likes of Haaland for the most FPL points points in the season, as we all expected him to. So having Salah over Harry Kane might not be ideal, but it certainly isn't the worst case scenario in the world. I've also got Bruno Fernandes away to West Ham, and I'm looking at this, and as good as Bruno Fernandes has been in recent games, I might even bench him because I've got some really good players on my bench for Game Week 35, and that could be a huge issue there. And it's going to be really tricky to decide upon, some benching dilemmas. Even in Double Game Week 36, I'm going to have 3 Double Game Week defenders, and it might mean benching the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Bruno Fernandes even. So I'm going to have a lot of team selection headaches, I think, in the weeks to come. I think 35 is a bit simpler, but in the doubles, it certainly won't be an easy situation in terms of deciding which players I have to leave on my bench, and there will probably be some bench points in the end. I also have gone for Marcus Rashford here away to West Ham, and I think that's just kind of standard stuff. I tend to favour midfielders and attackers over defenders, and it makes sense here to go for Rashford and Bruno Fernandes. But if I had to leave one out, it probably would be Bruno Fernandes, despite the extra price and also the better form in the last 2 game weeks. And of course, this isn't counting the Brighton fixture, which still hasn't happened at the time of this recording. And the final 2 midfielders are the 2 Brighton ones in March at home to Everton and Mitoma. And as I discussed in the reaction stream, in the reverse fixture, March got 11 points against Everton away, and Mitoma got 8 points. So I'm expecting something here from at least one of them. Maybe not both at the same time like it happened the last time out, but at least one of them to produce a decent return, and that would be more than enough for me for Game Week 35. I won't be going for one forward yet again, and this probably won't be the case for the rest of the season. So I'm going for Ollie Watkins. This could be his last time in my team this season. Away to Wolves, he actually blanked in the reverse fixture, but I'm quietly confident that Wolves could maybe leak in a few goals. They're already on the beach, and you kind of got that impression from the game against Brighton, but they might also, at home, be looking for a response to that embarrassment. And despite Aston Villa's really good form, they just lost to Man United, and maybe now you're going to see a bit of a dip, and you're not going to see that consistency in terms of straight wins and scoring in every single game as we saw beforehand. But I still think Aston Villa have that motivation. They're going to be chasing a European spot and looking to end the season strongly and carry that momentum into the next campaign. So I'd still give Aston Villa the edge here, but Wolves might be a bit tighter at the back and also try to produce a response in front of the home crowd. But this probably will be Ollie Watkins' last game for me, and if I were to make any transfer this week, it will be Isak in for Ollie Watkins a week early, and that will all depend on the news we get from Arsenal. If Gabriel is ruled out and we're going to get a Kiwior and Holding partnership against the likes of Isak and Wilson, I'm sorry, but a Newcastle forward probably has to be bought even this week over the likes of Watkins, despite the fixture obviously looking much tougher on paper. The final forward is going to be Erling Haaland at home to Leeds, and despite Sam Allardyce taking the reins there to try keep them up with 4 games remaining, I see no other eventuality or possibility than Erling Haaland scoring goals, Man City winning by 3 or 4. I know there's a bit of a discussion about Erling Haaland potentially being benched in preparation for the Champions League semi-final. I still think he's going to start. Maybe he'll be subbed off a bit early, and that won't stop him from getting enough points and probably being the highest scoring player once again, as he has been for pretty much every single game week this season. Now it's just about the bench, and whilst I've got that conundrum of the goalkeeper, Raya versus Kepa, and it could be a case of 2 versus 3 points like it was in 34, I'm still very mixed upon that, and that's going to be my biggest benching headache. I've also got the likes of Trippier, Botman and Greenwood there. Obviously Greenwood speaks for himself, he's always going to be there, he's an enabler, and he's never really going to be part of my consideration for the starting 11, but Trippier could still yet come in, and it's just a question of who makes way. And I'm looking at the likes of maybe even Trent Alexander-Arnold, Estupinian, Bruno Fernandes or Luke Shaw, and even a Brighton midfielder could make way too. But I'm quite happy with my starting 11, and maybe benching Trippier could backfire. I think he might have something in store for Arsenal, and a lot depends really, I think, on the Arsenal team news. I know Gabriel is more of a defensive headache for Arsenal, more so than an offensive, problem for them, but I think that could play a big part in the momentum and also maybe the mentality going into that game. If Arsenal go in there without 2 of their key centre-backs, they might just be insecure in general, maybe adopt a more defensive approach, and they might struggle even more than they would have done anyway against Newcastle at St James's Park. So that's going to be a tricky one to decide on as well. The same goes for the captaincy, you could argue, but when you have Man City at home to Leeds, it doesn't matter if you have a managerial bounce or whatever. The form Man City are in, Erling Haaland scoring goals every single game. He just broke the record, so you could say his motivation is lower. I just don't really buy that. I think he's going to keep on trying to score as many goals as possible, and Man City still want to secure the Premier League title, and they probably will, but they still need to do it just in case. They can't afford to drop points or to take take anyone lightly, even a team like Leeds who have been struggling all season. But if I were to go against the Haaland captaincy, I think the main ones I'm going to mark out are Salah, a Man United midfielder, or one of March or Matoma. So it's going to really come down to my midfield. But if I had to kind of nail it down to maybe 2 players, it probably would be Salah or Matoma. That's the way I'm kind of currently going about it if I decide to go against Haaland captaincy. If we get any news of him being benched before the deadline as well, for example. But let's now go to FPL.team, show you some benching headaches I will have as well for Double Gameweek 36 with one of my transfer plans, which I discussed already in this video, to try triple up on Newcastle. As bad as Chelsea have been, I would definitely give Kepa Arrizabalaga the edge in Gameweek 36, facing Nottingham Forest at home compared to David Raya there, with a tougher fixture, I would argue, although Brentford are a better team, and it's not like West Ham are exactly flying at the moment. I'm also going for a back three here, purely of Double Gameweek players, of Trippier, Estupiñán and Sven Botman, a midfield 5 of Salah, Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, Matoma and Solly March, and a front 2 of Isak and Haaland. And I would probably consider captaining Isak, but of course we'll talk more about this as we get closer to the Double Gameweek 36 deadline and in that team selection video. But I think Isak as a captaincy option should genuinely be considered. The same goes for Callum Wilson, and maybe if this was like 2 or 3 months ago and we knew about this double in advance, we all would have said Trippier. But at this moment in time, it's very difficult for me to really advocate for that when Trippier's not keeping enough clean sheets and not getting enough attack and returns. But maybe a big result and performance against Arsenal could change our perception about that. In terms of the bench though, look at that. The likes of Luke Shaw, Trent Alexander-Arnold and even David Raya could do extremely well here. So I've got a lot of benching headaches potentially in Double Gameweek 36, and that's something I realised when I looked ahead to these future game weeks, and I want you also to consider this. So go to websites like FPL.team and visualise your squad in a few weeks time and see if you're going to have some benching headaches and try to plan accordingly. It will really help you out in terms of your transfer plans and decision making. And in terms of the captaincy as well, apart from Isak, I'd maybe consider a Brighton midfielder or even go for Trippier, but I think Isak was the one that takes the cake in this instance. But thank you very much for watching this video. If you ended up enjoying it or finding it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 300 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, channel memberships, Discord server, and the FPL League. A huge shout out goes out to all the subscribers, patrons, and channel members who really help us out to keep on growing, and we will achieve the next objectives because of your support. I wish you all the best of luck for Double Gameweek 36, but of course, most importantly, 35, which you still have to tackle first, and I'll see you next time.